SheBelieves Cup. Going to be taking place very, very soon. It's going to kick off on February the 17th and run through February 20th. United States is going to be hosting Czech Republic, New Zealand, and Iceland. It's going to start in Carson, California, and end in Frisco, Texas on the 23rd. There's a lot to get through in terms of just the roster itself here. And just so people are aware of who's on it, I want to rattle off some names for everybody. So get ready for the roster coming at you by position. We've got goalkeepers with 3. Aubry Kingsbury, formerly Bledsoe of Washington Spirit, Casey Murphy from North Carolina Courage, and Alyssa Nair from Chicago Red Stars are running out the goalkeepers with 3. Defenders are 8 total for the core here. It's Alana Cook out of OL Reign, Abby Dahlkemper, San Diego Wave FC, Tierna Davidson, Chicago Red Stars, Emily Fox, Racing Louisville FC, Sofia Huerta from OL Reign, Kelly O'Hara, Washington Spirit, Emily Sonnet, Washington Spirit, and they're welcoming back Becky Sauerbraun into this camp from Portland Thorns. For midfielders, 7 to round out the core: Morgan Gautrat, Chicago Red Stars, Lindsay Horan, Olympique Lyonnais. And then there is Rose Lavelle, OL Reign, Katerina Macario, also Olympique Lyonnais, Chrissy Mewis, New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC, Ashley Sanchez, Washington Spirit, and Andy Sullivan, Washington Spirit as well. And 5 forwards that we are going to be witnessing in this tournament: Ashley Hatch, Washington Spirit, Mallory Pugh, Chicago Red Stars, Margaret Purce, New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC, Sophia Smith, Portland Thorns FC, and Lynn Williams out of Kansas City Current. I gotta say, 23-player roster when it dropped. Listen, I liked it. I'll put myself on blast. I liked the roster for SheBelieves Cup. I think it's been quite in line with what we've been seeing out of head coach Vlatko Andonovski. If we're just looking at the most recent camps that have been coming into play for this United States women's national team, and I mean, I'm talking even as far back into, those September and October windows, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at the end of that that post-Olympic United States women's national team tour, and then obviously heading into that calendar year with those friendlies in Australia, and sort of seeing these call-ups happening for the younger players, kind of the next gen players coming in, and now coming directly out of this January camp, Lisa, all of these familiar names still on this 23-player roster.
21 NWSL players, just the 2 from overseas, and Cat Macario and Lindsay Horan. That's if you missed it on last week's news and notes, Lindsay Horan is on an 18-month loan to Lyon from Portland. That happened on January 27th. So now she's no longer in the NWSL for this roster. But you said it best, Sandra. This is a lot of new names that maybe haven't seen a lot of time in game minutes, a lot of fresh faces, but really good. I like this because this is really turning a new page. There's a few names that are left off this list that we definitely have to talk about, but a lot of these players that are called into this camp are players that really deserve it. I mean, even a player like Morgan Gautrat, midfielder out of Chicago Red Stars, she wasn't initially called into the January camp. And then due to some injuries for players and different decisions, such as Cat Macario staying with her club in Lyon and not attending the January camp, it opened up 2 spots. One of those for Morgan Gautrat, the other for forward from Portland Thorns, Morgan Weaver. And clearly Morgan Gautrat proved herself in that January camp, and she outplayed the other midfielders, and she was working hard all over the pitch. And she's a player that does have a lot of experience on the national team. So she already had a leg up over a player like Morgan Weaver, for instance, but it worked. Her hard work paid off, and she proved herself in that January camp, which is a big theme that head coach Vlatko Andonovski said during his media availability, is that if you worked hard and you showed something in January camp, you were going to be named to this roster. So Morgan Gautrat, just one of the players, and I know you're high on her horse as well, but it's a lot of good names. I mean, the forwards, when you went through them: Ashley Hatch, Mallory Pugh, Margaret Purce, Sophia Smith, Lynn Williams. I love this forward group. 3 of these 5 forwards have 10 or fewer caps with the national team, and their average age is just over 24 and a half. So young crew scoring goals, making waves up top, getting minutes with this team. I'm really happy about this.
I'm
Excited to watch
excited.
him play.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think ever since that Australia window of
Mhm.
games, right? That maybe into 2022, some of us who were wondering how many of these players were still going to continue to get looks at this level in terms of evaluating players ahead of a 2023 World Cup. That's not too far away, right? We're talking maybe 18 months out. I think that's being a little generous, but we're gonna get to see so many of them play again. I believe it's about 18 or so
Mhm.
of these names that were on that Australia roster, that Australia camp as well. So to sort of see this continuity, right, kind of come into play, I think is very, very important for this particular group of players. And
That Australia friendly game at the end of 2021 in November, that changed everything, right? It was like a peek into the future of Vlatko Andonovski's team, and that's been a theme. Every time January camp roster and this roster comes out, we reflect on the November Australia friendly rosters.
and I think it's smart. I think it's good to sort of have had the United States Women's National Team be able to sort of close out their calendar year the way they did, sort of embracing and inviting all of these sort of next gen players, and quite frankly, kicking off their calendar year with sort of the same concept, right? But also sort of having within that a mix of some things, because of course, adjacent to this, adjacent to the excitement around the return of so many of these players for the SheBelieves Cup roster, there's also the conversation about like, well, what about player X, Y, and Z, right? These sort of bigger name, more veteran players, these typical name stay type of players for the U.S. Women's National Team. And Lisa, you already mentioned Sam Mewis in the media availability that took place post roster drop. Head coach Vlatko Andonovski speaking about how Sam Mewis is still rehabbing a little bit from injury, going through physical therapy, working on fitness, going to be participating in preseason with Kansas City, and eventually will be back with the United States Women's National Team as soon as possible. So you do wonder if maybe a combination of that and the efforts of Morgan Gautrat like allows this opportunity to continue for a player like Gautrat with her return into the national team. And although not named officially on the roster, somebody like a Trinity Rodman is still included as part of the training, these SheBelieves Cup training camp rosters, because they want to continue the development of this young player as well. And within the media availability, Vlatko Andonovski asked about that as well. Like, why not officially name this player to the roster if so much of the narrative around it is, hey, you're giving opportunities to players that to continue to evaluate them. But the concept was that, even though she's doing well in club and she did well in January camp, to compete on the national team at this level is a completely different beast, right? Completely different animal is the phrasing that he used correctly. So they want to keep her still involved in this environment, but sort of introduce her into new systems, into new styles, slowly, step by step, instead of just throwing a bunch of information at her at once. And of course, Lisa, there were obviously big names in there that we mentioned before in the past that have been missing from these rosters for a little while now. Someone like an Alex Morgan, Kristen Press, Tobin Heath, Megan Rapinoe, Julie Ertz, etc.
Yes, those names, I think, caused a bit of a stir, especially with U.S. Women's National Team fans that are some of the OGs, because players like Rapinoe, Alex Morgan, Press, Heath, I even saw some people on Twitter asking about Krieger and Harris. Yeah, they're not being called in, guys. It's okay. Their time is now with Gotham. But when you look at these kind of big names, former namestay players that are getting a little bit older when this roster skews younger, the players that are maybe, quote, the biggest names missing in Alex Morgan, Kristen Press, Tobin Heath, Megan Rapinoe, they are forwards. They are players that play in the front line, and they are getting older. They've had the experience, but now it's an opportunity for younger players to come in and prove themselves. In the media availability, of course, Vlatko Andonovski, head coach of the United States Women's National Team, was asked about these big star players, Press, Morgan, Heath, Rapinoe. And Vlatko Andonovski said that he wanted to give players like Sophia Smith, Mallory Pugh, Ashley Hatch, Cat Macario a chance, because they have either earned their spot on this roster or re-earned their spot. A player like Mallory Pugh, who was with the team a few years ago, before she wasn't, she suffered some injuries and now she's back. And this is a chance for these younger players in Smith, Pugh, Hatch, Macario to get game minutes, not just training minutes, but actual game minutes in these SheBelieves Cup matches. And so he can evaluate them in a game setting, in the training setting, so that when the World Cup qualifiers come up this summer, 2022, ahead of the Women's World Cup in 2023, he can have better material to make his decision on. And that doesn't mean, he said this, that Press, Morgan, Heath, Rapinoe are out completely. It just means that he is giving these younger players a chance in game minutes to really make a good decision based on every single aspect of their game. And these SheBelieves Cups matches is a great chance for them. Another player that I was also a little curious about why she wasn't on this roster is draftee this year to Racing Louisville midfielder Jalen Howell. She's been in the January camp in 2020. She was called in 2021. And during the media availability, head coach Vlatko Andonovski said that Howell will be in future camps, but she just got outplayed during this January camp. And they wanted other players to take a look at this gaming environment, get her a chance with Racing Louisville in the NWSL, because he knows how important league play is and club play is for a player like Jalen Howell. But when you look at not having Julie Ertz in this call-up, not having Sam Mewis, it leaves some open spots in the midfield that a player like Jalen Howell, I think, could have been an asset during these SheBelieves Cups, because she's a younger player that could experience some game minutes, get some caps under her belt, playing against these different teams in Czech Republic, New Zealand, and Iceland. But hey, she wasn't called in. I mean, she went to January camp, and this is another option where Morgan Gautrat maybe outplayed her a little bit in that similar position in the midfield that they have. But those are the players that really are, quote, missing from this roster.
And it's not too many, right?
No.
We're sort of comparing January camp roster to SheBelieves Cup roster, looking at someone like a Sam Mewis, right? Not on there. Jalen Howell, not on there. Imani Dorsey, who ended up having to get pulled out of that January camp, right, due to injury, and someone like a Naomi Girma, and similar responses in terms of their absence, right, of the SheBelieves Cups roster in terms of Howell and Girma. You're talking about two players who went 1 and 2 respectively, right, in the NWSL draft. Vlatko saying that he was actually pleasantly surprised to see some of the development of Girma while she was in January camp, but similar to Howell, they want to see them thrive in an NWSL market and in NWSL matches, and sort of see their continued development there throughout the league. And for Dorsey, again, somebody who still has to get back in to preseason grind with Gotham to sort of rehab her injury and get fit and healthy again before getting called back into something like a SheBelieves Cup or something with a competitive camp that's going to have actual fixtures attached to it, you know. So there was a lot, I think, within the availability that came sort of post roster drop, you know. And I think probably the biggest thing about it that people are maybe latching onto is the fact that, you know, Vlatko is sort of talking about how the importance right now of having these types of rosters for these types of opportunities, for these types of fixtures, right? The games that are coming into play that happened at the, you know, to cap off the 2021 calendar year and now to kick off 2022. And that the conversations with the veterans haven't necessarily changed. That it's just like, you're not in this camp, keep working on what you're working on, and we'll see you back into future camps. And every situation is different, right? Because every player is different. Everyone's human and they're all individuals. So whether it's somebody, you know, like a Julie Ertz, where there's been conversations about like what's going on with the knee injury, like what's happened, you know, post Olympics, you know, see what happens there. Talking about the conversations there, just having to get back into market and having to play things. And I think that would echo similar for somebody like a Tobin Heath, right? Who had to kind of work back from some injury and is just now starting to get some extended minutes with Arsenal. And I'm sure once you're sort of getting that time with your club, you're going to get back into the mix with the national team. And then you got to have sort of, I think, that give and take, right? You got to have sort of that mutual relationship. I mean, we have somebody like a player like Kristen Press who actually said, you know what, I need some time away.
Yeah.
I need some time away from playing soccer. Like for me, I'm choosing me. And you got to have a certain amount of trust with not just yourself, but with your coach to sort of ask that and say like, hey, I need this. And there has to be the equal amount of trust from your coach to say like, you know what, do you? And then when you get back into to marketing and playing, we're gonna have another conversation, and you'll get back into the mix. So I don't know. I think people like to get real fixated on maybe who is or who isn't in to the rosters, especially when it comes to those like experienced players, And sure, of course, they've been with the team a long time. I thought it was very important that he kind of painted the picture and that listen, like these are players who have literally won everything they could have possibly won at this level. And like, this is actually a really good window of time to not evaluate them because I know what they're about, but I don't know what these players are about yet. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Vlatko almost has to like bring the fans and the media back to reality. Like, yes, they won it all. They've won gold. They've won a World Cup. Like they've traveled the world and done all of this already. One thing that I want to look at and dive a little bit deeper, and I'll try to summarize it as best as I can, is all the caps for this current roster that he does have called in. I mean, we start with Becky Sauerbraun as the center back, the captain of this squad. She is coming back in after not being called in during the January camp because she's a player that can lead and teach and pass the baton on to younger defenders. She comes into the SheBelieves Cup roster ahead of these matches with 199 caps. So she is one match away from her 200th cap, making her the 200 will make Sauerbraun the 12th player in U.S. women's national team history to play 200 or more times. She's also only the 4th defender to hit 200 caps, which is crazy. Also no goal. So fingers crossed that we'll have the drawn up play from head coach Vlatko Andonovski to get Sauerbraun the goal. We'll see though. Alyssa Nair, goalkeeper for Chicago. She is called in. This is her first game roster since the Olympics when she got injured in that semifinal match in early August. She is back into this, which is really, really promising. So it's almost like the trade-off for Sam Mewis not being there, Julie Ertz not being there potentially due to injury for both of them. Even Amani Dorsey you can throw into that injured camp, but Alyssa Nair is back on this list. There's also, when you look at caps and age and experience, only 3 players with 100 or more caps, 9 players with 60 or more caps, 10 players with 12 or fewer caps, and 6 players that are only in the single digits heading into these games. And when you look at the one player that is uncapped, it's goalkeeper Aubry Kingsbury, formerly Bledsoe. And I love this. A goalkeeper, so we have Alyssa Nair, who played in the Olympics already. Casey Murphy, who got her first call up at the end of 2021, played in both of the Australia friendlies and played lights out. 2 of her best matches ever. And that really set the tone for 2022 and 2023 for her career. She calls into January camp and now called into the SheBelieves Cup roster. And then there's Aubry Kingsbury, who was 2021 goalkeeper of the year, won the NWSL championship with Washington Spirit. She's a goalkeeper that is 30 years old and potentially getting her first cap in the SheBelieves Cup. So it's not necessarily about age. It's about skill, and it's about experience, and it's about ability to get better and ability to learn and push yourself and be the best. And if Kingsbury is hitting that peak at 29, she got engaged, she turns 30, she gets married, and she makes it on to a U.S. women's national team game roster. I think that's so huge. And I'm really happy and really excited to hopefully see Kingsbury get a cap, play some minutes in this SheBelieves Cup. I like this. And I love to touch on the goalkeepers, right? Like, It's so fun.
We say it all the time, so we're big fans of defense here, and by extension, that includes the goalkeepers. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm with you. I like the mix of goalkeepers that are in it. I mean, obviously, the return of Nair is huge because this is someone that we haven't seen in a little while, and we're sort of witnessing the rise of Casey Murphy a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what the NWSL's best goalkeeper could possibly bring to SheBelieves Cup.
Sandra, I have to throw this question at you. We were potentially going to see it at the end of 2021 with the lineups and the rosters and the formations for Vlatko Andonovski. Cat Macario called in as a midfielder in this crew. Can we see her? Will we see her? Do you expect it? And predictions to see Cat Macario as a false nine?
I don't know. I hope so. So I guess my prediction is please? Question mark. My prediction is please. I would love to see it. I mean, the fact that it was sort of teased, right? Before in the previous camps. But it just didn't come to light just due to injury, right? And then there were no games centered around January camps. And Macario also was not part of that January camp due to some important games that were taking place with Olympique Lyonnais, I think specifically against Paris Saint-Germain. So she was not available for January camps. But now she's back for SheBelieves Cup with what I'm assuming is intentions to, get match minutes during any of these 3 games that are going to be occurring. But yeah, I would love to see it. And I think for a little while, a sector of pundits, a sector of fans have wanted to see it. I think obviously teasing that a little bit, maybe the coaching staff themselves would like to see it. I mean, to sort of be able to see this particular player maybe tap into a little bit of what we saw coming out of this player, maybe going from the collegiate game to the pro game now, being able to be someone who's able to kind of drop centrally right, play a little deeper when needed to sort of be able to disrupt things, open up lanes. And this is a player that can create her own shot. If you don't believe me, the highlights are out there. To be able to do that in this type of position, I would love to see.
So who would you like to see complimenting her in the front line? Who are the 2 forwards she's playing with? Here's
the beautiful thing about it. These 5 forwards that are called into this SheBelieves, I don't care. Any one of them. Honestly, I would love to see it. So there's 3 games. Let's mix it up. Let's do it. But I think, to maybe start off to maybe get that first kind of look at it. I wouldn't hate it if it was, somebody like a Sophia Smith, and then maybe somebody like a Lynn Williams, just to sort of see the start in this one. But maybe somewhere along the line we'll see like a different combination of that. Maybe it'll be like a Macario and a Williams and a Hatch, or a Macario, a Purce, and a Hatch. I would love to see any combination of that.
I would too. I hope so. And even in the midfield, seeing who Macario can complement with. I mean, I think we'll see Rose Lavelle in there alongside Macario as well. I like that Ashley Sanchez got called into this camp. Clearly, she did well in January during that training camp there. But okay, I'm excited to see who he throws up top. And I think we're going to get Cat Macario as a false 9. I do. He teased it before. Well, what is he doing? Just playing with our heartstrings?
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel personally attacked from Margaret Andonovski, but I'm not one of them. I'm just here to see what happens and develops in front of us. And I'm sure we're going to be keeping our eyes on SheBelieves Cup along the way, because it's coming. It's coming quick. It's going to be here sooner than we know it, for sure.